Hey, Adam, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Hey, Ryan. Good to be on with you. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's always great to talk college football, and I think we're only 82 days away from the Crimson Tide in Louisville. I think it's about 80 days away from the rest of college football. So we're beginning to kind of taste it a little bit here in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a long off season, as you know. Someone, when I put out the power rankings today, said, hey, slow news day. You're putting this out there. It's like a slow news month in general. Not a whole lot of news right now, but, the season is getting closer, putting together some schedule pieces and other things right now. And, SEC media days are not too far away, and the other media days will follow, and then we'll get going with preseason practices.
And it's kind of funny that you brought up SEC Media Days. We were talking about it a couple of minutes ago with another guest, and we're talking about how miserable that day is going to be for Nick Saban. July the 18th, that Wednesday, when Nick Saban comes rolling in to the College Football Hall of Fame and the one of the hotels there as far as the setup, I think it's Dual Place, he's going to have a miserable day because it's going to be quarterback in every single room he goes into.
Yeah, right. I mean, obviously Nick's been through these quite a few times. He knows what is going to be asked about. I'm sure he'll get frustrated at times, but like you said, it's not going to be a big surprise to him that that's the number one thing people want to talk about. It's one of the more interesting quarterback competitions that I can remember because of the circumstances. You're coming off of a national championship game, having a quarterback in Jalen Hurts who had tremendous success as a starter, but then having another guy in Tua who was the hero of that national championship game. So I don't really know if there's a precedent for this, and it's going to be fascinating how it evolves here up until the season opener against Louisville.
Adam, let me dive a little deeper into this article here. You've got Alabama, the best team in the country, not just for this year, not just for next year, but all the way through 2020. Give me some of the reasons that you put Alabama at that number one spot.
Yeah, it was a pretty easy decision, Ryan. Alabama, because of their defensive success over the course of Nick Saban's tenure there and recruiting, obviously always at a high level, developing players. It was just, and again, coaching went into this ranking. I said that in the introduction, more than the unit rankings. And, I know Nick is turning 67 this fall, but I do believe, he'll coach through this evaluation period through 2020. And you look at what they have coming back on defense. The linebacker position was such a story last year, and the different versions that they trotted out there because of injury. Talking to coaches in the SEC, they think this could be, one of their better groups of linebackers. You got Davis back at defensive end. I know there's some retooling in the secondary, but I think their outlook on defense is tremendous. And then the outlook on offense is a little different now, I think, because of the element that Tua brings, if he is indeed the starter, this year and next year. He can do some things that we just haven't seen Alabama quarterbacks do from a passing standpoint, and maybe start to maximize a little bit more of what they've had at receiver and tight end over the past few years. So, again, usually there's some real debate about this top spot, but, Alabama coming off of another national title, 5 in the last 9 years, their recruiting success, and even though they do have quite a lot of new faces on the coaching staff or guys in different roles this year, Nick Saban's still there, and so it's just very hard to put anybody ahead of Alabama right now, as far as the next 3 seasons.
Let me ask you about this defensive ranking, because we're talking about the new faces and Tosh Lapoy being a new guy. In December, or let's just say November, is this a typical Nick Saban defense? You think everything comes together? Is this a typical Nick Saban defense? Does this team miss a beat on the defensive side of the football?
I think they're going to be really good again. And, again, I think part of it's that so many linebackers saw the field last year because of injury. So there's not going to be a unfamiliarity there with some of those younger players, being in bigger roles. I think I got a guy on the defensive line that no one can block. It's going to be a huge asset for them. And then, sure, Minkah Fitzpatrick will be a tough loss. Everything that he brought to the table from a leadership standpoint. But you look at the numbers that they seem to always have in the secondary, I think they're going to be okay. And, certainly it's a new coordinator, but it's still Nick Saban's defense. He's still there. He's still in charge. And, I don't think their schedule, we've talked about this, I don't think their schedule is overly taxing. They'll have Auburn at the end, we know, and Auburn can score, and Auburn's got a quarterback. But, how many other teams on the schedule are ones that should really, make Alabama fans worried at this point in the year? A&M is a new coach. Arkansas is a new coach. Mississippi State has an exciting offense, but the game is at home, and that's a new coaching staff. So I still think Alabama right now you have to look at as a heavy favorite in every game going into the season.
And I think that's the question that we've been throwing around today is who is Alabama's most difficult opponent, for 2018 in the regular season. What we know right now, Adam, is there a team that you look at and you say, this will be the hardest opponent, this will be the most difficult challenge for this 2018 team during the regular season?
Well, again, the game at LSU is always, from a talent standpoint, that's usually the team that people say, has the most to match up with Alabama. But, they have a major question at quarterback, as they've had for many of the last few years. I think Mississippi State defensively, how they're going to turn out is going to be huge because we know that they can score points. We know that if Nick Fitzgerald returns at full strength in Joe Moorhead's system, they're going to be very dangerous. Even though that game is in Tuscaloosa, that's an interesting one. And then certainly Auburn at the end of the year. Now, again, the game is at home. Alabama's going to want to avenge last year's loss. I think Auburn, though, might have one of the more accomplished defensive lines in the country returning and a quarterback returning in Jarrett Stidham. So I would say it's one of those three going in. But, Louisville should be down. I don't think Alabama should have too much trouble with Louisville. And, again, I don't see Tennessee is not a team that's going to challenge them this year. So, it shouldn't be too difficult of a path to at least put themselves in position to win the West Division and get in the SEC championship game.
I know your job is not to please other fan bases, but when you publish articles like this, they're just waiting for Nick Saban, Alabama, to have some type of view, to go optimistic, to go, hey, they're going to drift away. Then when you rank out these articles for 2018, 2019, 2020, and it's Alabama again, that almost has to be like fear for the other opponents going, dadgummit, when will they ever just go away?
Sure. Well, again, a lot of us thought, I thought Clemson was going to beat them in the semifinal. I really did. And if that was the case, they wouldn't be number one because I think Clemson, may have gone on to win another national title and may have the best outlook because Clemson's recruited obviously at a tremendous level, throughout their roster, but at quarterback, with Trevor Lawrence now coming in, maybe to be the starter this year or at worst to succeed Kelly Bryant in 2019. They're going to be in very good shape there. They always recruit well at receiver. They always recruit really well along the defensive line. Their offensive line is a unit to watch because Alabama pushed them around in the semifinal. Georgia has a tremendous outlook. I put Georgia fourth in this thing, but they could be much higher next year if they're able to repeat what they did. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that this year after some of the personnel losses. But you're talking about future and optimism and recruiting momentum and all those things and coaching stability. I think Georgia's right there. It's happened quickly, but it's happening right now for Georgia. So they're a team that can challenge. And Ohio State, again, I have them 3 in this ranking. They are 2 blowouts away from who knows what they would be able to do. Certainly last year, not being blown out by Iowa, if that was just a more respectable loss, do they get into the playoff ahead of Alabama as a Big Ten champion? That's very possible. But, they haven't been able to avoid that embarrassing loss. And with their talent level and their head coach, that should never happen. Urban Meyer's been very clear about that. So there are these other contenders out there, Ryan. But after Alabama wins another national title and does it in the way that they did, you can't really make a case objectively for anybody else to be at the top.
Who is that other team outside of the top 10? It could be in your top 25 that you think can push a little bit, that can make a run and maybe be a team that we're talking about in 2019, 2020, that can be a team that we could put in this top 5, top 10 category that's right now on the outside looking in?
Sure. Well, two teams that I had a lot of trouble ranking, and they've actually have very similar profiles when you think about it, are Texas and Michigan. These are 2 teams that are very proud of their tradition, but have not done a whole lot, quite frankly, in the last 8 or 9 years, or in Michigan's case, maybe even longer than that. But you look at their rosters, and Michigan, this is the year that they need to break through for Jim Harbaugh. Now, they were ranked 5th in my defensive power ranking, so the talent is there on defense. Their problems have been quarterback and offensive line. So if they can get those positions straightened out with Shea Patterson likely moving in as a starting quarterback, Michigan's outlook, I think, changes dramatically. Texas is a team that we've been waiting for them to break through, and they seem to be doing so on the recruiting trail. with some of the class they signed and finalized in February, plus some of the guys they've already brought in for future classes, especially at quarterback. Tom Herman's an offensive guy. Like, they should be okay, or more than okay on offense going forward. So those are two teams, talking to coaches in the Big 12, they already feel, Ryan, that the personnel on defense at Texas is the best in the league. Now, that may not be saying much for fans of the SEC to hear, but that's already a good sign for Tom Herman, because you would think it's only a matter of time before they get the quarterback position and the overall offense on track there. So I think Texas is a fascinating team to think about for the next few years, along with Michigan.
Adam, I want to go back to what you said a couple of minutes ago. We're talking with Adam Rittenberg, ESPN college football analyst, who's written a big article talking about the future rankings. You brought up that Clemson-Alabama game, and we talked about it the week of, but really haven't went back and hit it a lot since you just brought it up a couple seconds ago. We were talking about, what if Clemson beats Alabama? Do they take over as that number one spot, the standard in college football?
Well, right. I mean, at that point, they would have made, 3 national championship games in a row, possibly winning back-to-back national titles if they were able to beat Georgia in that game. And even if they wouldn't beat Georgia, I mean, just to get to that point, I mean, nobody has really done that other than Alabama, in the last, 8 to 10 years. So Clemson's always up there in recruiting. We know about their facility. They have tremendous staff continuity, Ryan. And I would say that's one difference between Alabama and Clemson. Not to say that it's all worked out bad for Alabama, but let's face it, there's been a lot of staff turnover there, especially at the coordinator position. And this year, you have two new coaches, even though they were both on staff last year, stepping into coordinator roles for Nick Saban. Meanwhile, at Clemson, and I asked Tony Elliott about this before the Sugar Bowl, like, why don't you guys ever leave? And they just say, well, we don't think there's anywhere better to work than for Dabo Swinney here at Clemson. That's why he stays. That's why Brent Venables stays as one of the most accomplished defensive coordinators in the country. So Clemson has tremendous stability. They recruited at a high level, and they've shown that they're not, just a 1 or 2 year, hey, we can challenge for a national title. But they have staying power. That's why I had Georgia at 4, honestly, Ryan, in these rankings, because, a lot of the things right now point to Georgia being that next program, but they have to do it, in my mind, for more than 1 year. If they're able to follow that up with another playoff appearance, another SEC East championship, and really push a team like Alabama for an SEC championship, then I think you can say, okay, Georgia's one in that top 2, top 3. But Clemson has shown they belong, and if they had won a national title, I think they'd be your top team in these future rankings.
We're talking to Adam Rittenberg right now, and to go back to what you said about Clemson, isn't it unique, because we get these blinders on here that this is the only way that you can do it when you're talking about the grind from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. and, the shifts that Nick Saban is able to work. But then you look in Clemson, South Carolina, and you look at Dabo. This guy coaches Little League baseball. I mean, think about that for a minute. I mean, and the grind that they do it, it's polar opposites here and then compared it there, but they're able to do it their way and stay at the top. It's pretty amazing what that coaching staff is able to get done.
Without a doubt. I wrote about this, I believe, last spring when I went out to Clemson, and not to be derogatory towards Alabama or even the Patriots, but you look at the two most successful football organizations, one college and one pro, they have the similar perception, the one that you just outlined of just grinding all the time and maybe not having a whole lot of fun from the head coach on down. And Clemson has taken a different approach because of Dabo and his personality. Now, I think there's a side of Dabo that we don't see as much because he doesn't show it, which is maybe more similar to a Saban or to a Belichick. But talking to enough people that have played in that program or coached for him, that is who he is a lot of the time, the fun-loving guy, and trying to mix the two. Fun and football can go together. So it does show that there's different approaches. Both have been successful. Both have produced national championships the last couple of years, and I think both will continue to be successful. But I do think it was important when you look at the Patriots and you look at Alabama for there to be another organization that comes along and says, hey, we can do it differently and still have success and still win championships.
I love the future rankings. It gives us a lot of things to talk about. Adam Rittenberg, I appreciate your time. Let me invite people to go to ESPN.com, find the NCAA football tab there, click on it. You'll find the college football information, the ESPN Insider article, Future Power Rankings, Alabama, Who else at that number one spot? You'll find it right there, ESPN.com. Adam, thank you for your time. I hope you have a great day, sir.
Okay, you too. Thanks, Ryan.